The story of Kisa Gautami and the mustard seed. In a small village in ancient India, there lived a young woman named Kisa Gautami. She was known for her gentle nature and deep devotion to her family. Kisa Gautami's life was filled with joy when she gave birth to her first child, a son. He was the light of her life, and she cherished every moment spent with him. However, life took a cruel turn when her son fell ill unexpectedly. Despite her desperate attempts to nurse him back to health, he passed away in her arms. Kisa Gautami was shattered. She could not accept the loss of her beloved son. Refusing to believe he was gone, she clung to his lifeless body, weeping inconsolably. In her grief, she went from house to house in the village, asking for help. "Can anyone bring my son back to life?" she pleaded with her neighbors. The villagers, moved by her sorrow but unable to help, whispered among themselves, "She has lost her mind. How can anyone bring the dead back to life?" One compassionate villager, seeing her despair, suggested she visit Gautama Buddha, the enlightened one, who was known for his wisdom and compassion. Desperate for a solution, Kisa Gautami decided to seek his help. She carried her son's body and traveled to the monastery where Buddha was residing. Upon reaching Buddha, she placed her son's body at his feet and begged, "Lord, please help me. Bring my son back to life. I cannot live without him." Buddha listened to her with deep compassion and understanding. He did not dismiss her grief or her request. Instead, he said, "Kisa Gautami, I can help you, but I need you to do something first. Go back to your village and bring me a mustard seed. But there is one condition. The mustard seed must come from a household where no one has ever died." Hearing this, Kisa Gautami felt a flicker of hope. She thought to herself, "Surely I will find such a household. My son will live again." With renewed determination, she set out on her mission. She knocked on the first door and explained her request. The woman who answered looked at her with pity and said, "Oh, Kisa Gautami, I can give you a mustard seed, but I must tell you we recently lost my father." Kisa Gautami thanked the woman and moved on to the next house. There too, she was met with a similar response. "We have mustard seeds," they said, "but we lost our daughter last year." House after house, the story repeated. Every family she visited had experienced the pain of losing a loved one. Some spoke of parents, others of siblings, and still others of children. As the day turned into evening, Kisa Gautami began to realize the profound truth of Buddha's request. Death was not something that had singled her out. It was a universal experience, touching every family and every household. Her grief, while deeply personal, was not unique. Everyone she met carried their own stories of loss and sorrow. This realization began to shift something inside her. She saw that her suffering was part of the greater cycle of life and death, a truth that connected her to all of humanity. Her heart, once consumed by despair, now began to open with compassion for others who had endured similar pain. As night fell, Kisa Gautami returned to Buddha. She no longer carried the lifeless body of her son, for she had laid him to rest. She bowed before Buddha and said, "Lord, I could not find a single household without death. I now understand the truth you wanted me to see. Death is a part of life, and no one can escape it." Buddha looked at her kindly and said, "Kisa Gautami, you are not alone in your suffering. Just as no house is free from death, no life is free from loss. By understanding this, you can begin to let go of your attachment and find peace. Letting go does not mean forgetting or not loving. It means accepting the impermanence of all things." Kisa Gautami stayed with Buddha and his followers, learning the teachings of the Dharma. Over time, she became a devoted disciple and found solace in helping others through their grief. Her journey from despair to enlightenment became an inspiration for many who struggle with loss.